This week, the Supreme Court finally weighs in on your rights as a parent and what your kids learn in the classroom. The MAHA movement, Make America Healthy Again, comes out swinging this week against big food and the Democrats in a civil war over the future of their party. These stories and much more straight ahead this week on The Lion Week in Review. Welcome in to this week's edition of The Lion Week in Review. It's a weekly look at the culture, the courts, your state capitol, and your kids. I'm Chris Stigall. Now, let's meet our panel. Some of the men behind the stories at readline.com. This week it's all men anyway. Josh Mann, managing editor. Michael Ryan, executive editor. And Adam Wittenberg, deputy editor here at The Lion. Gentlemen, welcome to all of you. And we dive right in with some great headlines at readline.com. Starting with you, Michael, the Colorado, my word, not yours, Colorado lunatics that are desperate to sanctify this transgenderism stuff. You've written a whole column about it.
Yeah, tell me what you really think, Chris. There's a bill in the Colorado legislature already passed by the House, and it's in the Senate, that would, as America First Policy Institute puts it, classify a parent's refusal to affirm, i.e. parrot, their child's subjective gender identity claims as a form of coercive control by the parent. Colorado courts would be required to consider this as abuse when determining parental rights in custody disputes. Every public school, including charters, will be forced to participate in the social transitioning of gender-confused children. Schools could not adopt a policy of referring to children by their legal names. It would further define misgendering and dead naming as discriminatory acts in places of public accommodation, and this provision would force every Colorado business to adopt gender ideology speech codes or face ruinous lawsuits. This puts the kids in charge at home and in society. It's worse than censorship. It's compelled speech. It's the government telling you, you must say this, you must not say that. That's scary. That's not even the Bolsheviks thought of that.
It is a running theme. I think this is the second week we've talked about a story where a state, where a legislature is trying to legislate a wall between parents and kids. We saw it in Illinois last week with homeschooling, and Illinois threatening homeschool parents, Adam.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the liberals are showing their cards. This has been in the cards for a long time, trying to destroy the nuclear family, trying to destroy, the patriarchy, for lack of a better word, or just the flow of society. And now we're seeing it. And the Bible talks about that in the latter days. Children will be rebellious to parents. But I think what's surprising is to see government officials, many of whom are parents themselves, not only endorsing this, but celebrating it, thinking they're doing the right thing.
Josh, this is one of those things that I think culturally, this is where you have to have churches. You have to have strong leaders in churches at the pulpit talking about this, yes?
Yeah, that's right. And I think respect for parents' rights. And fortunately, the Supreme Court has ruled on some similar cases in terms of respecting the rights of parents. And so I think ultimately those rights would prevail or will prevail, but parents do need to be paying attention and standing up, letting their voices be heard. We need to see pushback on these things. And these lawmakers need to understand that they can't get away with it because parents are going to demand their rights, so that they are protected in the Constitution. And so hopefully we'll continue to see resistance. And it's just so important that people continue to read The Lion so that they know all of these sorts of threats that we're seeing all across the country, especially to parents' rights and the family.
And staying with you, Josh, for a minute, you had a story this week that is a kind of a companion story to maybe the last 3 weeks I remember reading and talking here about declining enrollment in public schools. It continues to be an issue, I think, maybe largely because of the very subjects we're talking about right now. But what do you know about Baltimore specifically?
Yeah, it's kind of the same story, new city, new school districts. So school districts across the nation are facing enrollment declines, both because students are leaving, because their families are making better choices, but also because there's a baby bust and demographic decline. But in spite of declining enrollment, many of these schools, including the Baltimore Public School District, have been going on hiring sprees over the last 5 or 6 years. Enrollment fell in Baltimore by 6% between 2018 and 2024, but staffing surged by nearly 19%, and most of that surge were administrative sorts of positions, not even instructional positions in the classroom. Why is that? Why are they spending more money on admins when they have fewer students to serve? At the same time, graduation rates fell, average SAT scores fell, attendance rates have fallen, and the dropout rate is also falling. And so more money is not solving the problem. More administrative staff isn't solving the problem. Public education needs to look at itself in the mirror and ask, and taxpayers really need to ask, how do we educate the next generation best?
And Michael, this also dovetails with the news coming out of Washington that we're getting closer and closer perhaps to, if not eliminating the Department of Education, greatly reducing their direct role. Money's going to the states. States are probably going to start having some massive fights over stats, just like Josh shared, I would guess.
Yeah, and as education does devolve back to the states and local communities, those communities are going to have to be more responsive to the people that they serve. It's just amazing what was happening in Baltimore that Josh was talking about. They went on a hiring spree in the face of decreasing enrollment, attendance rates, graduation rates, and SAT scores. Who does that except government?
Adam, turning to a story that's all too familiar. It's a weekly refrain, maybe even a daily refrain anymore, at readlion.com. And that's the story of men in women's sports. And as it turns out, if it were up to Joe Biden, which I think we're increasingly aware it was never up to Joe Biden, he wasn't nuts about it either.
Yeah, exactly. Great point, Chris. And basically, yeah, our reporter wrote about how it was now being let out that in discussions among officials, Joe Biden did not favor allowing men in women's sports. But he was this dawdling old grandpa, was probably never really in control, just like you were saying. And so he didn't speak up and he didn't do anything to change the policy, just like he didn't change the border policy and he didn't change these other policies that Trump, in a matter of days, has reversed course and has produced results. And I have to read the quote from Trump in a recent tweet where his Easter message, and he says, he's wishing happy Easter. And to the person that ran and manipulated the auto pen, perhaps our real president, and to all the people who cheated to get this highly destructive moron elected, have a very happy Easter.
In fact, Michael, I remember it was Biden. Didn't he use the occasion of Easter to pay tribute to the transgender community, if memory serves?
Yeah, and that's before the Easter Bunny got in the way and waved him off. If you read up on Joe Biden's rise to power, you see that it was always more about power and practicality than principle. That's just the way it is. But this episode also shows the power of the woke mob to cow even a sitting president of the United States, albeit one with diminished faculties. It shows that Mr. Biden was worse than his detractors even thought. And now history is turning on him.
Josh, turning to the Supreme Court, again, kind of a similar theme. In Maryland, there's a school district, a county, actually fighting the idea of parents having a say when opting their children out of LGBTQ-themed reading. Sounds like maybe the court is trending the way of the parents. We don't know yet, at least as we sit here and talk today. What do you know about the story?
That's right. In this case, Mahmoud versus Taylor, it looks like these religious parents are poised to be victorious at the Supreme Court. What's at stake in the case is their right to religiously object to questionable sexual materials in libraries and classrooms. And so it's huge. We've seen this over the past few years. These kinds of cases come up through the court system, parents objecting at school board meetings, and yet here it is before the Supreme Court, and the court appears ready to side with parents' rights, religious freedom. I think in contrast to the last story where you saw our previous president had a certain conviction but was silent for whatever reason, and it ushered in this era of transgender identifying males stealing the honor due female athletes. By contrast, you see these religious parents standing up for their rights, and here they are about to win before the Supreme Court. It's a difference in conviction and what people should do about those convictions. And so we'll have to see. The ruling is expected in June, but it does appear that Supreme Court is ready to respect the rights of these families and parents.
Michael, we led the story with yours, the show today, with a story in Colorado. We talked about Illinois, the Week before this, now we're talking about Maryland. Here again, it's more states, it's more counties, it's more government telling families to butt out. We'll handle your kids.
Yeah, and in my reporting, especially on the explicit books that are in schools and libraries, it's become apparent to me that parents just don't know how bad the material is. And when they do find out and they say something, they get smacked down. It was interesting to me in the oral arguments at the Supreme Court, Ketanji Brown Jackson actually seemed to support school choice, is what she asked. And what she said, you don't have to send your kid to that school. You can put them in another situation. Well, of course, not if you don't have the means or if you don't live in a state with school choice. And Maryland is not a state that has a lot of school choice. She should know that, by the way, because she was on the board of a Christian academy.
And Adam, down the road, the Lion doing some reporting right here in the backyard of the Herzog Foundation, where we shoot the Lion every week. Another one of these stories of a naked man exposing himself to women at a YMCA. What's going on there?
Yeah, just another heartbreaking case of a man in a women's locker room, and it was a mom and I believe her 7-year-old daughter, and saw him fully naked, top and bottom. And when the mom's like, "What are you doing here?" the guy goes, "Honey, I'm a woman." And, this woman got her daughter out of there as quick as possible. Of course she goes and complains, but here's the deal. The Y has an official policy that you can use whatever bathroom you want based on your gender identity. But you know who doesn't have exactly that policy, or who still has policies? The state of Missouri. There's something called indecent exposure. And sure enough, the police in North Kansas City are investigating a reported indecent exposure case, most likely this one here. So while you might be able to get some of these organizations to go along with these kooky policies, the law at the moment still stands that you cannot show this kind of content or nudity to children and in these spaces.
Wow. Fantastic reporting, and you'll read these stories and so much more at readline.com. I hope you go there today and every day. Panel, thanks. When we return, we'll wade through some of the sights and sounds from this week in cable news and on Capitol Hill as the Lion Week in Review rolls on next. Welcome back to the Lion Week in Review. If you missed any of the show or you're interested in more of the great news and information you're hearing today, be sure to regularly check it out at readlion.com. Michael, Josh, Adam, back. I'm Chris. Panel, let's go to HHS Secretary RFK Jr. This was a really interesting week for those interested in the MAHA movement. He joined the head of the NIH, Dr. Bhattacharya, Dr. McCary, now head of the FDA, made some big announcements. Here was sort of a summary of what RFK Jr. had to say this week about his agenda at HHS.
We're going to change things for real this time. Oh, and this is my legacy. It's President Trump's legacy. It's the legacy of all these people who have walked away from fortunes and going concerns, and we are disrupting this agency. We're taking it out of the hands of industry and we're putting it back in the hands of the American people. And we are going to have revolutionary change. It's not, listening to me today, if you think that we're not serious about this, you're making a bad judgment. So, and I have a president now behind me who does not care. He doesn't care what he's been called by every soda company, by every candy company, by every processed food company. And most of the time he tells me and says, I don't care, you do what you need to do and I'm going to block for you.
There is a vicious reaction to this guy. If you've been on social media, you've seen it, Michael. What is the vicious, venomous reaction to a guy who says he wants to make the country healthier?
That's crazy, isn't it? Well, I think it's the empire striking back. It's the establishment doesn't want this kind of change. And boy, talk about change agents. I mean, how many cabinet members are there? How many change agents are there in this government now? And Democrats fought mightily. His own party, right? RFK Jr. was a Democrat, fought mightily against his confirmation. I think what you're seeing now with all the food problems, big food issues that he's taking on, you're seeing the fox being escorted out, perp walk style, from the chicken coop.
Marty McCary, head of the FDA, headed over to CNN, and I actually thought they asked a pretty great question of him, and he explained this food additive stuff, why they're striking now. Take a listen.
Why are these petroleum-based dyes in our food and in our medication in the first place?
Well, good question, Dana. I don't think we appreciated the potential risks to human health and child health when they were first introduced. Yellow dye number 5, for example, was noted to be a bright, vibrant yellow color as the byproduct of coal tar in the coal ash, and then people decided to put it in fabric, and then they thought, well, we can put it in food. The studies have caught up with the introduction of these petroleum-based chemical food dyes, and the data doesn't look good. Studies have shown an association with ADHD. It also makes ultra-processed food look more attractive for young kids, messing with their minds where they feel full and they want more of the food. And we've got an epidemic of childhood chronic diseases, so we are erring on the safe side and moving to remove these from the U.S. food supply.
I'll confess, Adam, I did not know anything about petroleum-based dyes in our food. You hear it that way, and you think, yikes, why haven't we done something well before now?
Yeah, what's interesting is that if you look at the same food product in, say, Europe or the UK or even sometimes Canada, and there'll be posts online, I've seen them, and it will be like, Fruit Loops in America, and the ingredient panel's, 6 pages long, and, has all these weird things you can't pronounce. And then Fruit Loops over in these other countries, it has like beet juice and other natural colors. They've banned all this stuff. They don't allow. I mean, the list of chemicals and additives banned in other countries is like 2 or 3 times the size of the U.S. Why? It's what RFK was talking about earlier, the influence of industry and big money and big food influencing these things. I just want to say about what he said, it reminds me of the last Kennedy who came into office and was trying to make big changes and revolutions. I hope it doesn't happen to RFK, but he's stepping on some big toes here, and I hope it goes well.
Over at the NIH, National Institutes of Health, Dr. Bhattacharya gave a press conference this week, and he said it's time to let scientists get back to actually, engaging in questions, science, the scientific method. Listen.
Since 2012, the United States has seen no increase in life expectancy, none. And it collapsed during the pandemic, and only recently has it started to come back up to 2019 levels. That is a situation that is a catastrophic failure of the American public health system, and it frankly is also a failure of American scientists to address the key drivers of this enormous chronic disease crisis we're facing. And I'm really grateful to Secretary Kennedy for his leadership, and I'm grateful to President Trump for his leadership in giving us the opportunity to turn the ingenuity of American scientists to the questions of how to improve American health and to make America healthy again. Thank you.
And specifically, that conference was addressing autism and questions, not conclusions, but questions about various vaccines and shots, Josh. I mean, Dr. Bhattacharya said we got to let scientists ask questions.
Sounds pretty scientific to me. I mean, isn't this what people have been calling for? I think it's a breath of fresh air. It's too bad that they're getting opposed. I think a lot of it has to do with the president. It's just kind of really anti-Trump sentiment. But to have the strong leadership, that doctor referred to the strong leadership of both Kennedy and Trump. And he's right. Without strong leadership and this willingness to kind of take the darts that are being shot their way, we wouldn't have this opportunity. And so it's an incredible opportunity. I hope they're successful. I hope they can really get to the root causes of some of these trends, such as autism, ADHD, and other things, and really make us healthier. I mean, we live in a time now with science and engineering that we should be able to eat great food that makes us feel better and live longer. And who should be against that? I don't know.
And Democrats continue to struggle to find their voice in the midst of all of this. The Trump whirlwind, the reforms, the executive actions, that they're not really sure what to do, so they're reflexively opposing everything. Let's start with the daughter of the failed vice presidential candidate, Tim Walz. This Easter week, making an interesting comparison between Jesus and Abrego Garcia, the MS-13 gang member exported to an El Salvador prison. Listen.
If Jesus were alive today and in the United States, this administration would have already taken him and removed him from this country without due process, claimed he was a member of the MS-13 gang as a way to try to justify not giving him due process, as if there is any justifiable reason to not giving somebody due process. But yeah, some people don't want to talk about that.
And Ilhan Omar promises if they were in charge or when they're in charge, here's what you'll get.
If we were in the majority, here's what we would be doing. We would be holding non-stop oversight hearings about what the Trump administration is doing. Carrying out investigations into the corruption and the abuses of power and illegal actions. We would be holding Trump appointees in contempt of Congress when they lie under oath and violate the Constitution. And trust me when I say this, we would be suing Trump for stealing congressional authority, especially spending power.
So, illegal aliens are Jesus, Adam. Illegal alien gang members are Jesus, more specifically to the point. And if we were in charge, we'd be running constant investigations and constant hearings. And that's what you can promise you'll get when Democrats are back in charge. Is that what the American people want to hear, this kind of stuff?
Yeah, absolutely not. And we've talked about how the media has really painted this guy, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, as just a Maryland father. Well, he's not. There's credible evidence that he is gang member or gang affiliated. He had a restraining order filed by his wife. He was found in possession of marijuana. He's not a good guy. And there were 2 judicial orders to get him out of the country previously. So he's been ordered out. Now, yes, maybe in this particular case, he was swept up in this sweep and sent. There wasn't due process at this moment, but 2 prior orders to deport him, and now he's deported, and he's a citizen of the country where he was sent. This is not an injustice or a crime.
A couple of Democrats, though, don't like the direction of their party where it's headed. Bill Maher had this to say.
What do you think of the fact that the people who are getting the big crowds right now are AOC and Bernie Sanders? They're going around the country. Thank you, there's that same guy. I call him the always wrong guy. No, I'm kidding. Okay, but I feel like, big crowds, again, the shiny object that the Democrats chase. It's not about the big crowds that come out to you when you're talking in a festival or wherever they are. I think it's because I think Bernie showed up at Coachella. That must have been fun for the fans. It's who shows up on Election Day. And I just don't see that's the ticket.
Bernie and AOC, he doesn't see it. Neither does Chris Cuomo, interestingly, another Democrat.
AOC has done nothing meaningful in Congress. She's done it all on social media. And she's one of your leading names in who's going to be president. Do you not get this concept of 80-20? She's an 80-20 loser all day long. Why? She is clearly catering to a minority. She's her own version of MAGA. She's looking for an outraged enclave. She's not about the majority. She's not about consensus. She's not about solutions. She wants government to give you everything. She's a socialist.
So, Michael, how's this going to shake out? Your Tim Walz, Ilhan Omar faction versus your Bill Maher, Chris Cuomo faction. What do you see?
Well, I think most conservatives are pulling for AOC and would love to see her as the nominee. There are some Democrats in the media who have moments of lucidity, like you just saw, and are standing up to the power of the woke fringe of the Democrat Party. But the momentum is with that woke fringe, and clinging to, and some people who are lucid are clinging to what is a cratering party that is totally out of favor with the vast majority of Americans, and I don't see why they're doing it.
Go to The View. Whoopi Goldberg very unhappy with Donald Trump's proposal of a $5,000 bonus if the ladies here in the country will have babies. Listen.
I am incredibly insulted by this because clearly they don't know how women's bodies work and they don't know what it costs to raise a child or just have a child. And $5,000? I don't know what $5,000 is supposed to do. And it's not even $5,000 because you have to cut it in half because you got to pay taxes on it. Yeah. So they're offering you $2,500 to have a baby. Now, don't forget about all the stuff they've cut.
Right, we have a
that
list
you
of
need.
that.
Yes, you have a
That
list.
part. Yep.
So I'm supposed to say to you all, and are you ready for this?
Yeah.
What do you think of this proposal? Does it address the reasons why perhaps people aren't having children these days? But aren't you excited about it?
Yeah. Josh, I think it obviously misses the point. There's a birth rate issue in the country, but also it evoked this visceral pushback this week from many, particularly on the left, this idea that it's a bad thing to have kids.
Yeah, the government, I mean, always incentivizes behaviors with the tax system. That's how taxes work. That's why there are tax credits for various things that the government says, you know what, it would be good if we had more of this or less of that. That's kind of taxes 101. Now, what the government is doing under the Trump-Vance administration is promoting pro-family policy, which is a good thing. Now, is $5,000 enough to cover diapers for a couple years? Yes, but is it enough to pay for everything? No, that's not the point. The point is, how can we help young people who maybe want to grow their family in some small ways? And this is just a small incentive. It's not the be-all, end-all. But I think the left does show its colors in this strange anti-family stance, this anti-tradition stance. But I think there's kind of a silent majority on this, I think. There's a lot of young people who do want to have children, and I think would welcome the incentive.
Gentlemen, thanks. When we get back, we'll wrap it up. Next on The Lion, we can review. The panel picks their favorite stories you don't want to miss. Stay tuned. Welcome back to The Lion Week in Review. Panel, take it away for the wrap-up for the week. Adam?
Yeah, I just want to say real quick on that Whoopi Goldberg thing. She's paying 50% taxes because she earns $8 million a year on that show. Most Americans are paying much less in tax. So I also wrote an article on that story. But for my favorite, definitely Michael's. Please go read this. If you know people in Colorado, call them, have them call their legislator. If you're a person of prayer, pray. This is serious.
Michael.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's my favorite, but it's a stunning story, again, about a man exposing himself in a North Kansas City YMCA girls' locker room, and imagine the trauma of the child, 7-year-old child, and confusion. Some women have penises? Oh.
Josh.
We've got a great story about a mother of two children who had very different educational experiences. Her daughter has benefited from school choice scholarship and been able to go to a Christian school. It's turned her life around. This daughter was born in prison to this mother. Unfortunately, the mother's son had a much worse experience in public education and wound up addicted to drugs, falling in with the wrong crowd, and sadly lost his life. And this mother would tell people, look, this is what school choice did for our family. It helped her daughter thrive. I would encourage our readers to look for that story at The Lion.
Great stuff, panel. Thank you. Next week, it's Trump's 100-day recognition, and The Lion will be there to talk about it, so sit tight. Meanwhile, check out all the latest news at readlion.com, and if you missed any of today's show, head over to YouTube and check it out. Until next time, thanks for downloading the show here at The Lion.